climate and environment update. Here we are in June of 2019. I came across just a few articles, and I encourage you to look these up if they sound interesting to you. The National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, NOAA, forecasts a very large dead zone for the Gulf of Mexico. The Gulf of Mexico, a larger dead zone at the mouth of the Mississippi River. High spring rainfall and river discharge into the Gulf are major contributors to the size of the dead zone. This summer's Gulf of Mexico hypoxic zone, an area of low to no oxygen that can kill fish and other marine life, to be approximately the size of Massachusetts. What happens is all the runoff from agriculture higher up in the Midwest and other pollutants also dump into the Missouri, Mississippi rivers, and they run downstream into the Gulf, and that makes it a dead zone. It's inhabitable for marine life. Here's the next article. Temperatures leap 40 degrees above normal as the Arctic Ocean and Greenland ice sheet see record June melting in June of 2019, June 14th, from the Washington Post. This article was by Jason Samenow. Ice is melting in unprecedented ways as the summer approaches in the Arctic. In recent days, observations have revealed a record-challenging melt event over the Greenland ice sheet, while the extent of ice over the Arctic Ocean has never been this low in mid-June during the age of weather satellites. As we go along here, I've got a couple of the headlines before I make some recommendations. I'm not just talking about climate change here and global warming. If you are a person that doesn't believe in climate change and global warming, just eliminate that, and let's just talk about pollution. Let's say for a moment that climate change is not happening, or we're just having a natural fluctuation. Let's say global warming is just a fluctuation, a natural fluctuation, not caused by human action, which I believe actually it is. I believe it is caused by human activity. But let's just say for a moment you're a person that doesn't believe that. Then let's just talk about pollution. So here's the next article. The dump killed my son. Mountains of garbage engulf India's capital. This is also in the New York Times in June 10th of 2018 by Hari Kumar and Kai Schultz. Huddled in a stinky, airless room near the center of India's capital, this woman's name, Ramurti, fumed over the 17-story high mountain of trash half a mile from her home. The 40-year-old mother had watched the garbage in her village of Gazipur pile higher and higher over the years. It wafted a sickening cocktail of airborne particles that infected her neighbors with tuberculosis and dengue fever, singed trees, and turned the groundwater a filmy yellow. If you just go to Google and put in trash woes India, you'll come across pictures and articles and videos of these amazing towers of trash that are just building and building. Well, sure, it's over there in India. I don't care because I'm in the United States over here. It's just over there. So it's not a worry. I'm going to turn this video off and not listen to Dr. Fuller anymore. But remember, it's kind of like this. Let's say you owned a 10,000 square foot home, and we decided to do an experiment. For 1 year, you have to keep all of your trash, all of your refuse in your house, okay? You can't throw it away. You have to keep it in your house. So far away in the lowest part of the furthest part of the basement, you would start piling your trash, and as the weeks went on and months go on, you have to keep piling your trash. What would it seem like at the end of that year? It would probably be a problem, right? Because you're in this house that's this closed system, and there's limited space, there's limited air, there's limited area to be able to handle this refuse or trash that you're throwing away over there. Well, if you think of the earth, it's also a closed system. Things don't go away. So over there will eventually affect us over here. And we have our own trash woes. I remember reading an article, and I want somebody to dig this up. I looked for this, but I couldn't find it. Somebody dig this up. It was from the Smithsonian. I believe the date was 1994. And I remember they were talking about a bit of the trash crisis that we have in the United States, about our landfills becoming full. And they also talked about what is in the trash that we're throwing away. And close to 50% of the trash was just simply paper. So we could obviously avoid that. Another article that I didn't put in here either is, we know in just a short period of time, microplastics, which are the slow degradation and breakdown of bigger plastic items, are breaking down into our oceans, causing these things called microplastics. The microplastics are going to outweigh marine life in just a few years. That's how much plastic is ending up in the oceans. Here's another one. Mexico City, parched and sinking, faces a water crisis. Climate change is threatening to push a crowded capital toward the breaking point, by Michael Kimmelman, published in the New York Times in June of 2019. Literally, Mexico City is sinking because they're pumping out water as they drill further and further for fresh water. It's actually sinking. You can see pictures online of city streets that used to be straight. Now they are curving, where there's dips in the road and so forth, and in the buildings too. What prompted this show today is listening to that environmental show on NPR. This one is called LOE, Living on Earth. The website is loe.org. In WBUR in Boston, the show is on Sunday mornings at 8 a.m., but you can listen to the shows anytime. This is the opening part of the show on Sunday, June 14th. The title was Sobering Climate Risks. This, you think the stuff that I just told you was pretty sobering. This is way worse, way worse. If carbon emissions keep going up until 2030, and by the way, that's 10 and a half years from now, it will be too late to avoid a hothouse Earth with 1 billion climate refugees starting in 2050, only 20 years from now, according to the Australia-based Breakthrough National Center for Climate Restoration. These researchers warn the climate is changing faster than politicians and the public are responding, and say interventions on a scale never before seen during peacetime are needed right now. And this is Steve Curwood talking with David Spratt, of the research director at the Breakthrough National Center in Australia. 1 billion refugees. Now, just recently we had the Syrian refugees from the conflict there. It was somewhere around, I read 1 million, it might have been more than 1 million. 1 million refugees, let's say, went to the European Union. And look at the trouble, the difficulty that the European Union countries had to deal with 1 million refugees. Imagine what we're going to have to handle with 1 billion climate refugees who are moving away from these hotspots in the world where there's just, you can't grow food anymore. It's too hot. There's no water. You can't grow food anymore. And these people need to move. So what do we do as individuals? A couple of articles here. New York Times in December of 2017 by Sumini Sengupta. Globally, this is food waste now. We throw out about 1.3 billions of tons of food per year, or 1/3 of all the food that we grow. The 1/3 of the food that we grow. Now, we know that agriculture is one of the most energy-consuming processes and greenhouse gas emitting industries on the planet. If 33% of that is completely, totally wasted, let's just stop that. So we as individuals, anytime that we're shopping for food or going out and eating food, I've talked about this on the show before, just be more conscious, be more aware. If you're going out to dinner and you're not going to take that food home for consumption, split an entree, share food with the other people that you're there, only order that you know what you're going to consume. That makes sense. And then when you go shopping, just make the grocery list very, very tight on the food that you're going to consume that week. Things that are non-perishable, there you go, you can handle that a little bit longer. But maybe you should be going twice a week to the grocery store to pick up the produce that should be the mainstay of your diet anyways. The other thing that I want to say about food is a lot of people have these diets of Atkins, paleo, primal, Mediterranean diets and so forth. that are higher on animal proteins and animal products. And I can tell you this, I'm okay with those principles. And a lot of people that do paleo, primal, Atkins, and so forth, South Beach, whatever it might be, they actually get healthier. But more or less, it's because they're eating less processed foods and sugar, and they're eating more real food. The problem with that is to try to feed 7.5 billion or 9 billion or 12 billion people on a higher animal protein food is very, very inefficient. So if you have an acre of land and you grow crops that you feed to cattle, chickens, and pigs and so forth, that's very inefficient. You only get so many hundreds of pounds of food per acre. But if you take that acre of produce and consume it directly, a plant-based diet, that's much more energy efficient. So I tell people, sure, if you're going to do the paleo thing, do it, but do a high vegetable paleo. If you're going to do primal, do high vegetable primal. If you're going to do Atkins, absolutely high vegetable Atkins. You see, we're going to have to adopt a more plant-based diet if we're going to see this earth turn around. So that's one thing that we can easily do as individuals. Plus, you save a lot of money, right? If your food bill goes down by a third because you stop wasting food, you're going to save yourself money. Transportation, the next time you need a vehicle, get a more energy efficient vehicle. Maybe you get a plug-in hybrid like I have now. Makes sense. The plug-in Kia Niro hybrid that I have now, I plug it in. You don't have to do any additional electrical work at home. It runs off the house current. I don't have solar yet, but I'm hoping to do that. If I had more power, I would make solar cheaper to get because I'm looking at that price tag and trying to weigh that out. But I would have solar, so now the sun runs my panels, which fuels my car. That's coming, of course, right? That's the whole Tesla model, right? You become your own, you become, if you will, energy independent. But think about your transportation. I try to ride my bike as much as I can year-round to my office. Not everybody can do that, but more people can do that. So I'm building in my exercise with my commute, so I'm driving a lot less. That's another way to do the transportation thing as individuals, and then you save money on gas, right? Housing, instead of upgrading to a bigger house, maybe you upgrade to a smaller house. I call them expensive boxes of air. We were talking about heating and cooling before the show today. So maybe you go smaller. Maybe you're thinking of an addition because you can afford it. Maybe you don't do the addition because if you don't need it because you have more people. But maybe you just skip the addition and you put that into something else. Maybe you upscale into a smaller house as well. That makes sense to me. And then you play around with your thermostat. Maybe you go a little cooler in the winter and you don't cool it as much in the summertime. You just knock it at a degree in each direction, and then you get smart thermostats and so forth. Clothing, now a lot of people don't know this, the garment industry is a huge carbon footprint, massive. Never mind, non-cotton types of products become microplastics. And the shorter we wear clothing, the more it ends up into the waste stream, and we run into problems. So we have to consume fewer garments. Now that's going to be a problem for the economy, for Wall Street, for your investments, for your 401k, for stocks and everything else. But we're going to have to start shifting from a consumer stuff-based economy into a less consumer-based thing, throwaway type of society. So start wearing stuff a little bit longer and consuming fewer clothes, and maybe begin to lead your children in a situation in that area that we don't need 500 pieces of clothing. Maybe we need something a little bit less. So we have to become a bit of a smaller consumer footprint. And the last one is people need to consider family sizes. The number of people on the planet is the issue. If you think about it, again, as I talked about, if we had 1 billion people on Earth, our conversation right now would be a bit different than we have 7.5 billion now. We're going to climb to 9 billion or 12 billion, whatever that's going to be. The more we have, the more we consume, the more we heat, the more we cool, the more carbon footprint, the more consumerism, the more stuff. So we need to now consider smaller family sizes, and there are a lot of people, including myself, that are considering not having children at all. So that's something that we can do, but here's a way of wrapping our head around things that we can do as individuals and families and communities that can begin to make a difference. I'm Dr. Scott Fuller. Thank you.